future of Judge Brett Kavanaugh's Supreme Court confirmation is now in the hands of the full Senate. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm Jenna Browder.
And I'm John Jessup. The Senate Judiciary Committee voted along party lines this afternoon to advance Judge Kavanaugh's nomination, but it wasn't without some drama.
That's right. The drama came in at the last minute with a request from Senator Jeff Flake. CBN News White House correspondent Ben Kennedy joins us from the White House. Ben?
Well, Jenna and John, Senator Flake said not so fast. Yes, he did vote for Judge Kavanaugh to move ahead to the full Senate, but his vote on the floor is contingent to an FBI investigation. He is now calling for a delay, no more than a week, to allow the FBI to investigate allegations of sexual misconduct.
Call the roll.
Mr. Hatch. Aye. Mr. Graham. Aye. Mr. Cornyn.
Judge Brett Kavanaugh's nomination to the Supreme Court is now on its way to the full Senate.
I think it would be proper to delay the floor vote for up to but not more than 1 week in order to let the FBI continue to do an investigation. I will vote to advance the bill to the floor with that understanding.
The vote comes one day after this historic hearing that featured two emotionally charged testimonies. Dr. Christine Blasey Ford accused Judge Kavanaugh of sexually assaulting her at a high school party in the early 80s.
Brett groped me and tried to take off my clothes. I believed he was going to rape me.
Dr. Ford, with what degree of certainty do you believe Brett Kavanaugh assaulted you?
100%.
In denying the claim, Kavanaugh also fought for his reputation.
I'm here today to tell the truth. I've never sexually assaulted anyone. Not in high school, not in college, not ever.
Still, the judge also pointed out his belief that Dr. Ford is a victim.
The other night, Ashley and my daughter Liza said their prayers. And little Liza, all of 10 years old, said to Ashley, we should pray for the woman.
President Trump tweeted his support for Kavanaugh, calling his testimony powerful and the process a total sham.
This is a national disgrace.
Some Republicans unleashed their anger on Democrats for dragging Judge Kavanaugh and his family through the mud in an effort, they say, to score political points ahead of the midterms.
This has been about delay and destruction. And if we reward this, it is the end of good people wanting to be judges.
Now, Senator Graham is meeting with Senator Mitch McConnell at this hour to talk about the possibility of a week-long delay at the most for this FBI investigation. Senators Collins and Murkowski say they support Senator Flake's call for a delay on the floor vote. When President Trump was asked if he thought about a replacement for Judge Kavanaugh, he said not even a little bit, clearly standing by his nominee. Well, that's the latest from the North Lawn. John and Jenna, back to you.
Thanks, Ben. Our chief political analyst, David Brody, is now with us for more. David, you've heard Democrats say it all along that they want an FBI investigation. Now you have Republicans asking for it. What good, what benefit does it serve now that Kavanaugh's vote has cleared the committee?
Well, first of all, the actual FBI investigation is really not probably going to turn up much at all. They might interview a few more witnesses. They might get testimony from a few more different people. There might be a couple more small pieces of evidence. But look, I mean, that's what the committee does. I mean, that's what the Senate Judiciary Committee is tasked with doing. Now, Mark Judge will go ahead and give some sort of testimony, if you will, to the FBI, but he really has already done that, as we've seen just in the last 24 hours. And so, you know, ultimately, this isn't really going anywhere, and it's important to understand that the FBI doesn't come, as we've heard, to any conclusions. That is true. That is accurate. So basically, they're going to say, here's the evidence that we found, and the Judiciary Committee is going to say, yeah, we kind of already knew that.
One piece of information to add real quick. I'm being told that Senator John Cornyn of Texas has said that Republicans have agreed to do the FBI investigation.
All right, so that's a bit of breaking news into our newsroom. David, how much of the Democratic pressure do you think is calculating into Jeff Flake's decision to call for this FBI investigation? And also, you know, Senator Murkowski and others are calling for it now, too.
Yeah, it seems like they're all sticking together. Lisa Murkowski, a Republican, Joe Manchin, we understand, a Democrat, also saying he wants a 1-week delay for an FBI investigation. And now, of course, we have Jeff Flake as well. And we haven't heard from Susan Collins yet or Heidi Heitkamp. But Bottom line is, it looks like they're sticking together as a block. And so, this breaking news that you're talking about, Senator John Cornyn, it just makes sense that they would wait a week, basically, and say, hey, look, we're going to do the FBI investigation. Here's the good news for the Republicans. The good news is that if they do the FBI investigation, and there's an assumption that nothing else will turn up, and that's the ... and the parentheses and all of that, but if nothing else turns up, then Flake and Murkowski and Manchin, they're all probably going to vote yes on Kavanaugh. But the bad news for Republicans is it's one more week. And in 1 week, as we know, the Democrats could cause a bit of havoc.
That was my question, David. Do you think that this time in between, do you think we'll see more of these women come forward?
Well, I think we are, but here's the good news once again for Republicans. Brett Kavanaugh now on the record in a defense of him, his honor, his family, and so that is a searing image, I think, through all of this. And so despite the fact that there might be more allegations potentially, there's going to be 1 week that they're really going to have to kind of deal with this. And as a matter of fact, Jeff Flake even said, look, 1 week and no more. So there's a cap on this. So the way I see it going down is that in 1 week, the FBI investigation will come back. Assuming there's really nothing there, they'll go ahead and confirm them, and so they wait a week. And that puts, instead of October 1st on the Supreme Court bench, you're looking at maybe October 8th or maybe a little after that.
David, we got about a minute left. You talked about 1 week for that vote. However, in a little more than 30 days, we've got the midterm elections coming up. How do you think this is all going to play out, shake out for the midterm elections?
Yeah, really, honestly, John, hard to say. I mean, I've kind of see this as a blue blip. In other words, 15 to 20 seats transferring from Republicans to Democrats. They need 24 to take over the House. I do think the Kavanaugh situation could go either positive or negative. We just don't know at this point because there's so many twists and turns. I've called this as Brett Kavanaugh turns because it is a soap opera and it's happening every single day. And I can guarantee you we're going to have at least 2 to 3 more twists and turns every day for a week. And my calculation, I'm thinking 7th grade math, 7 times 3, that's 21 twists and turns. That's a lot of twists and turns.
That is a lot of
David,
turns.
final question for you. Do you think, all of the drama that we've seen, and we've seen Brett Kavanaugh just drag through the mud through this process, if he is confirmed, do you think that some of this drama will hang over his head?
Well, absolutely. I mean, first of all, from a psychological standpoint and from just from an exhaustion standpoint and from a reputation standpoint, it's going to hang over him for the rest of his life, as he said yesterday in the testimony. Now, I think the unanswered question, to play devil's advocate here and to take the Democrats' point of view here, they will say, he trashed us during the hearing the other day. In other words, he called out Democrats. He was angry. Yeah, and he not only did that, but he brought up President Trump. He brought up Bill Clinton, the Clintons, and so it makes you wonder whether or not how much politics are going to be involved going forward in all of this, and I think that's a concern.
Well, we'll just have to wait and see how this all plays out with a full Senate vote. David, thanks for joining us.
You bet, guys. Thanks.
All right, thanks, David. Well, the way Kavanaugh's confirmation process has played out is leaving many, including many lawmakers, wondering if the bitter bipartisan divide in Washington is here to stay.
I heard a bunch of speeches from a bunch of politicians who politicized this from day one. God help anybody else that gets nominated.
And Travis Weber of the Family Research Council joins us now. Travis, thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Well, Travis, as Lindsey Graham says, God help anyone who wants to go through this process and serve in office. Do you think Judge Kavanaugh's situation is going to prevent really qualified people from seeking this kind of position?
I think there's a real possibility that it could. Nobody wants to be in the seat that Judge Kavanaugh has been put in recently. Many people of goodwill, people of integrity, people that have served the public for many years do not go around seeking fights like this. They don't like having to take the hot seat and boldly defend themselves, as Judge Kavanaugh was forced to do. But he was really forced to by the situation that he was placed in. There's a danger that our partisan divide, partisan discord is going to deter people who would otherwise serve the public from stepping up and serving. And I think this whole issue, this whole situation we've seen develop over the last few weeks speaks to the role of the Supreme Court in our nation's political discourse as being far too important and far out of step with the place that the founders and framers of the Constitution originally envisioned it would have. The court is deciding social policy. Everyone knows it, regardless of which side they're on. That's why everyone cares about the Supreme Court. It shouldn't be as it is.
Travis, I know that FRC supports Judge Kavanaugh's nomination. If, and this is a big if he does not get confirmed, what is your organization and others who support him, what are they going to do as far as what happens next with this?
Yeah, we're going to support any qualified constitutional originalist to the court who President Trump puts forward. President Trump's list was very good. We have our preferences on that list, when you look at the list of potential nominees. For now, however, we're supporting Judge Kavanaugh. That was the president's pick. And, we did analyze his rulings and kind of looked at some of the nuances in his rulings, expressed concern about whether here or there in, some of the stances he took in precise rulings. All that's in the past at this point, though, with the Senate Judiciary Democrats' treatment of him, making this an absolute circus. So we're really focused right now on seeing that he's confirmed. We need the evidence to be aired. We want people to have a chance to air issues that need to be aired. That's all beside the point at this point, though, when you look at how the committee, the Democrats on the committee have treated him with the information being sat on for over a month. So in terms of FRC's perspective on this, he's a solid originalist. We want to see him confirmed. And the voters are definitely going to be watching. They watched this issue 2 years ago. It was a major issue in the presidential election. It's going to be a major issue in these upcoming elections.
Travis, thank you so much for your insights.
Thank you very much.
It's a new day for North Korea and the United States. That was the message Secretary of State Mike Pompeo delivered to the United Nations Security Council.
Time and time again, over the past quarter century, the United Nations has made it clear. The world cannot accept a nuclear-armed North Korea. That's not just the United States' position, that is the world's position. Past diplomatic attempts to halt North Korea's nuclear and ballistic missile development were unsuccessful. But now we're at the dawn of a new day.
President Trump's summit meeting with Kim Jong-un laid the groundwork for the denuclearization of North Korea, but says sanctions against the country must continue for now. CBN News national security correspondent Eric Rosales joins us with the latest. Eric, one of the issues North Korea wants is an official declaration to the end of the Korean War.
They certainly do. The one thing that they want is an end to this 1950 conflict, but they also want a guaranteed security from the United States. President Trump announced that he does plan to have a second meeting that's going to take place in somewhere possibly in Singapore, but sources that I talked to, they say that's possibly going to take place within the next few weeks, and it's all about money. It's all about sanctions right now for North Korea. But in my opinion, we really need to have some specifics on time frames of when we're going to start to see the end of these nuclear weapons, dates on when international inspectors can be able to come in. What's the amount of plutonium that the country has? I think Senator Lindsey Graham really said it best when he said, although North Korea has stopped missile tests and other things, what we really have to know is whether or not have they moved any closer to disarming nuclear weapons, and they have not.
Eric, I understand China and Russia are important players in this process. In many ways, though, they're hampering the process. So what's their motivation there?
Well, I tell you what, the clock is ticking. The pressure's really on Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. The U.S. will implement new sanctions on China for buying Russia weapons and aircraft, some $60 billion worth of products. Both China and Russia are behind some of the ship-to-ship transfers of oil that's taking place out at sea, and that's really hampering the efforts from the United States of trying to bring North Korea back to the table to make them talk about denuclearization.
And Eric, do you think that we'll see denuclearization anytime soon?
I really do. From what I'm hearing from my sources, both at the Pentagon and also within the State Department, we will see this denuclearization happen, but not anytime soon. I'm not talking within the next couple of months. It's going to take years. South Korea plays an important role in all this. They can really play more of a good cop while the United States continues to put the economic pressure on North Korea and play more of a bad cop scenario. So it's going to be an interesting next couple of months to see where exactly it's going to take the talks and the diplomacy that's going to continue between the two countries.
All right, Eric Rosales, thank you very much.
You got it.
Coming up, the case of an American pastor detained in Turkey.
As American pastor Andrew Brunson remains under house arrest in Turkey, that country's president wants American investment to aid the economy there. Jennifer Wishon explains why religious freedom advocates say that is something investors should avoid until Pastor Brunson is released.
During a recent trip to the U.S., Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan met with hundreds of investors. His country's economy is failing due in part to U.S. sanctions, and he's appealing to American investors to help Turkey recover. In a letter to President Trump, the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom calls that troubling, given Erdogan's personal and public support for the continued unlawful detainment of American pastor Andrew Brunson.
It's such an unstable country right now that in the way that the human rights violations that are occurring are so troubling, as we're seeing with Andrew Brunson, that we would really caution businesses to be careful about investing in Turkey.
Pastor Brunson has been detained in Turkey for nearly 2 years on bogus charges. During that time, the Turkish lira has lost 40% of its value due to Erdogan's power grab and the diplomatic dispute between the U.S. and Turkey over Brunson. Still, Commissioner Nadine Mayenza says Erdogan is using Brunson as a pawn to play to his Islamist base and distract from the pain Turks are feeling in their pocketbooks.
Their economy is spiraling, and their currency has devalued, and there's all sorts of problems in Turkey. So this is a really good distraction for the president to be able to point to this and say, see, look, I'm protecting our country from dangerous terrorists. And we all know Andrew Brunson is not a dangerous terrorist.
You know, here in the U.S., on mainstream news channels, news outlets, we're not hearing about Pastor Brunson on a daily, weekly, even monthly basis. But in Turkey, it's quite different. I mean, it's a huge deal that there's this Christian American man who's been charged with terrorism.
Right, he's been charged with trying to overthrow the government of Turkey, which of course is completely false. And the fact that he's in his home, we're so glad that he's not in prison, but we are concerned for his safety, because if there was, it's not like he's in a secured fortress the way that we feel like he should be. So we actually obviously feel he should be returned immediately to the United States.
There are rumors Turkey may release Brunson around his next hearing on October 12th. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says he expects talks with Turkish officials this week, where Brunson's fate will be discussed. A Brunson release would be a tremendous political coup for President Trump, but not nearly as sweet as it would be for his family and the millions of Christians who are praying for him. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, Washington.
Well, CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell joins us now with more. Chris, he's been detained now for 2 years. A lot of pressure on Turkey. We're hearing that there might be some movement at his next hearing, October 12th. What are you hearing? What is your sense? Will he be released soon?
The same thing. I've been hearing the same thing, that could be on October 12th. There was a deal, presumably earlier this year, that fell through. I think President Trump was disappointed in that. So I think there's more pressure, certainly economic pressure, and some political pressure for Erdogan to go ahead and release Pastor Brunson next month. And there's certainly a lot of Christians are praying.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. We hear about that all of the time.
Sure.
Chris, what's the importance of the U.S. fighting so hard for his release? I mean, it really is incredible, this one pastor, this whole country getting behind this one pastor.
It's historic. And some people go back to Ronald Reagan when he was advocating for the release of Natan Sharansky, who was a refugenik in the former Soviet Union. And it goes up to that kind of historic level. David was here just a few minutes ago, and I remember in his interview with President Trump, he asked them about Christians being persecuted in the Middle East. And I think this is indicative of how the Trump administration, unlike I would suspect the Obama administration, really is make religious freedom and certainly Christians persecuted in the Middle East a really source of attention, that they're going to pay attention and really have NATO allies facing off against each other just because of one evangelical pastor. It's historic, I think.
Chris, a question a little bit off topic.
Sure.
You live in Israel, and this week, President Trump at the United Nations made it very clear that he believes the peace process involves a two-state solution between Israel and the Palestinians.
Right.
How did the Israelis respond to that, and how did that come across Arab Street?
Well, I think what they're looking at, more than what Trump may or may not say about a two-state solution, is what's going on beneath the scenes for the past 2 years with Jason Greenblatt, Jared Kushner, David Friedman, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, what they're doing. And there, I think, is a more regional approach, not the kind of Oslo peace process we've had for the past quarter century. We just had the 25th anniversary. I think they're going to look for Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, these kind of nations coming together in a regional plan to put pressure on the Palestinian Authority. And I would add that really President Trump, the administration, has turned the Israeli-Palestinian peace process on its head. They have defunded UNRWA. They have kicked the PLO out of Washington. And in so many ways, they've moved the embassy to Jerusalem, recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital. And so really, I think the Palestinian Authority is trying to figure out what they're going to do. And I think the pressure is on them to stop the incitement to terrorism and really come to the negotiating table with a real serious peace plan of their own.
Chris Mitchell, all the way from Jerusalem. It's great to have you.
It's great to be with you.
Thank you. All right, well, next, a new bill that aims to keep kids safe from abuse. Well, kids oftentimes face the effects if their parents are going through a divorce, sometimes even becoming the victims of violence because of the situation.
That's right, Jenna. But as Paul Strand reports from Capitol Hill, a new House bill aims to protect those children.
Divorce can be such a nasty thing that courts often go way out of their way to try to be fair to both spouses involved. But what can get lost in the process is how unfair that can be to the children, especially when one of the spouses is an abuser, a beater, or even a killer. Texas Congressman Pete Sessions, along with these women who've seen their own children killed or harmed, brought before Congress this week this fact. In the last 10 years, 657 children have been murdered by a parent involved in a divorce, separation, or custody fight. They want courts to do more to prevent such tragedies. Jacqueline Franchetti said a court just listening to her warnings could have saved her 2-year-old daughter's life.
She was shot twice in the back while she slept. Her father then poured gasoline all over his house and set it on fire. And then he committed suicide. Her murder was 100% preventable.
An estimated 58,000 children annually are being court-ordered into unsupervised contact with a parent who that child has reported is harming them either physically, sexually, or emotionally.
Carol Lynn Morgan says court officials wouldn't listen to her and her 6 children reporting her ex's abuse, and police ignored her too.
It was devastating to me and to my children that they would have to continually suffer visits where they returned to me with clumps of hair pulled out of their head, horrible human bite marks on their bodies, bruising, cuts on their face and their head.
The House of Representatives just passed Congressman Sessions' resolution urging courts to make child safety the top priority in custody cases. Franchetti told this group in Sessions' office the court refused to see the danger her former spouse presented.
Despite giving the judge, court officials, substantial evidence that things were wrong and that they were escalating, this was a textbook case, and he took her life.
The women in Congressman Sessions' office have seen such horrors in their own families. They're hoping now that at least their stories can prevent such tragedy from happening to other children in other families. Paul Strand, CBN News, reporting from Capitol Hill.
A difficult topic, but definitely much needed legislation.
Yeah, light needed to be shown on that.
For
All
sure.
right. Well, that's going to do it for Faith Nation today.
Have a great weekend, everybody.